And if you want to let me know when we have enough people to get started and when folks have fully joined.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone. We will get started in a few minutes. Those of you watching online and those of you who are here, we're just waiting for a few more folks to join in so we can get started.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. We are going to get started in a few minutes. We're just giving folks an opportunity to trickle in before we get started. Welcome, everyone. We're just giving everyone a few minutes to trickle in so we can get started. It is already being live streamed, just so you know, but we will get started with the content shortly.
I was just gonna say.
Hello. Welcome. If it's okay to get started now, it's a little bit past 6 minutes past 4, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Folks would join us as they come through, and of course, a recording will be available in case folks who are in the committee are not able to join us right away, join us a little bit later, and need to review that information. It is also available for our families and our community members and our allies who are in the community who want to learn more about the work that we are doing. So I want to thank you all for being here today on a very busy, what I'm assuming is a very busy day for many of you all, for the Legislative Task Force conversation. We have an agenda for us today, but first I just wanted to say Happy New Year's to everyone in case, I think I already said it to you, but if I haven't, Happy New Year, and I will keep saying it. Board Member Tatum asked me yesterday, how long is it too long before you have to stop saying Happy New Year's? And I'm like, if I haven't seen you, I will say it. But we are so happy to have you all here. We know that we are working on a lot of work that has to do with legislative efforts that we want to do in order to support the work and the mission of Hartford Public Schools. And we know that through our legislature is one of the best ways we can do that work, right? Because it is one of the way, right, in which we fund our public education system and where we can leverage for equitable distribution of those resources. And so this task force is very important, and I am very, very thankful for all of the capacity, wisdom, and knowledge that you all bring to the conversation. Today, we will have sort of a little bit of a level setting conversation, share a few updates of where we are. We are just 2 to 3 weeks away from the start of the legislative session. So we wanted to, and we've been talking about a lot of very different tactics and things that we can try together. So today really is going to be about level setting, getting some updates, and then figure out what's next and what it is that we need to do to be the most successful this year. And one call that I wanted to name is that our CFO is not here today. And of course, she's an instrumental part of the financial conversation. So she will be back for next week's meeting. Next week's meeting would be on Wednesday at the same time. And she will be able to go over some of the financial conversations and that we had an opportunity to go through in the finance committee to level set. So we are doing this a little bit backwards. We didn't want to cancel today because there's some things that we still wanted to go over. But I wanted to make sure that you all know she will be back next week to provide some details on those financials. Some of you may have already seen it in the finance committee, but I wanted to make sure that she had some time to talk it through, because one of the things that we wanted to do last time is to understand the finances attached to some of these tactics or policies that we might want to pursue, and very much the details. And they did a really good job at breaking that down. What is the funding stream? How much of the funding stream? How does it impact us? And what are some levers that we can utilize to increase funding for Hartford Public Schools? So she's not here today, but she will be here next time. So if you, it'll be a really good time to tune in as well. So first we'll do a little welcome intro level setting. We'll go over legislative session timeline again based on committee deadlines review so that we know where we're going. We will review key dates for us as a legislative task force. We will have an update from our lobbyists on meetings with Hartford delegation and how those conversations are starting or going and where we are. And then we will review our goals of establishing, and actually I'll start here, a multi-year legislative strategy and goals. And then we will go into what is one or two areas of focus that we have drilled down that we want to focus on this short session based on our lobbyist expertise, based on the expertise of the administration, and based on the expertise of our partners here who are in the space with us. With a show of thumbs, does that make sense for everyone? I just want to make sure I get consensus. Beautiful. So first and foremost, I kind of wanted to, I had this later on in the agenda, but it makes sense to do it first. One of the things that we are trying to do differently at the Legislative Task Force is, number one, recognizing the importance of this task force and the ways that it can bring support to the school system. And that means that we want to have both short-term goals that we want to, legislative goals that we want to hit now, as we are sort of building this, right, for this year. But we also want to be intentional about the fact that it is not just, we want to be intentional about pre-prepping for those things, right? We know legislative session happens every year. We know some of the things that we need support in and some of the extra funding that we need. So one of the goals that we have, and we hope that whoever is sitting in this seat, right, continues to do, is to have these goals that are both short-term and long-term. So we'll go over some of these levers of funding that are legislative funding that we might go after, but some of them are just going to be for this session, and some of them might be goals or strategies that we want to try out later on the much longer year, that on the year that we have a much longer session, because then we will be able to have a little bit more time, a little bit more input, and a little bit more community and student engagement, but also things are just done, it allows us to plan properly. And I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page about that and just see if any quick feedback on that space, right? Setting up the goals for now, knowing that we might go after one or two things, and then the recognition that we want to build the infrastructure to keep doing this well and to be doing it in advance so that we know what it is that we need to do together to prep for that year. Community engagement, the policies we want to pursue, the tactics we want to employ. So I just wanted to pause and take a sort of a temperature of how that feels for folks. Verbally, physically, just given the space. Feel free to come off mute or raise your hand if you have thoughts. No? Cool. All right. So the next thing we wanted to go over is, if I'm going to pass it over to our lobbyists to a little bit go over the timeline based on the committee deadlines. Okay, yes, thank you for letting us know that the superintendent will be a little bit late. He has other meetings, but he will be here. If we can turn it over to our lobbyist to talk a little bit about the timeline, because we are 2.5, 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away from the legislature starting. So if we can just review the timeline based on the committees, and then review key dates that are going to be really important for us as a collective, to aid in that work.
Happy to do that, Chris or Patrick. I'll start, and then if you have things to add, please jump in. Yeah, so just for clarity purposes, the legislature released the actual deadlines. I had given you guys an estimate. These are finalized deadlines that I have also given to Christina and Krister so they can distribute those to you guys as well. Oh, look at that. Nothing changed a lot. My estimates were pretty much on the right track, but session will start February 4th. That's a Wednesday. They'll begin to start scheduling public hearings almost immediately in some committees. I don't know that education will have one scheduled by the end of the first or second week, but pretty soon after. So the week of February 9th, all committees will begin to start their public hearing process. Um, this is after bill concepts and ideas have been raised by the committee. And then this is the opportunity for public comment. It comes up really fast because, as we said, it's a really short session here. So I would say, prepare for it to start that week of February 9th because it's better to be prepared than to not be. Um, February 16th, around then is when budget revision meetings will start in the appropriations committee. There might be an opportunity to submit testimony there. That's also something we monitor for you all and let you know, hey, this is how it's going so far. Again, the budget is not, it's not a new budget this year. The budget is just revised. They make some adjustments because we are in a 2-year budget. Public hearings for the education committee, they're going to end around March 13th. So it's pretty fast and furious. So at that point of time, we're going to see a lot of the committees start to wrap up their hearings, start to wrap up their legislative work in terms of drafting ideas and drafting bills. There'll be like another week, March 22nd through 23rd. That's about when we'll see finance and appropriations end their hearings. They have a little bit extra time. I just like to flag those because sometimes, especially at the end, we will see some bills come out of there that have either been referred there or have bills that start there that impact our students, like school lunches, other sorts of taxes, things like that. By March 23rd, all of the education committee bills have to be referred out of the education committee. So that means the bills have been drafted, amended, and voted on by the entire committee to then go to either, if it has money, which usually education bills do, going to the appropriations or the finance committee for their approval as well. Or if it's just strictly policy, and they don't expect a fiscal impact, it would then go to its respective chamber. So it's a House bill, it would go to the House, Senate bill would go to the Senate. Those other bill, April 1st and April 2nd, that's when you're going to see all the appropriation committee deadlines and finance committee deadline. That is also when we might see a draft revised budget from the legislature. 2 years ago, they didn't end up, they did, I think at that point, recommend something, but it was very similar to what was already in the budget, and they didn't end up voting on anything. And they did not revise the budget, but usually we do see some sort of revised budget. The last week of April, though, is when those drafts are going to actually be finalized. It's usually like when you guys start to get that flurry of last minute emails from me and Patrick saying, okay, the bill is running in the House and the Senate. And that has all the financials and the key numbers. So kind of that month of April, a lot of stuff is still in flux, especially financially. And then the session is going to end May 6th. So again, very fast. Patrick, before I talk about key points, do you want to add anything? You're on mute though.
No, that's good. I'll just wait till we get to the legislative meetings part and talk about those dates.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of key session dates for engagement, I think I kind of hinted to this, but February 9th through March 19th, that's going to be the key times for public hearings. I would expect the education committee to probably wrap up, obviously, their work probably closer to the 13th, but there will still be, like I said, those like last minute public hearings in education and finance. And then mid to late April, that's when, if there's an opportunity for, even if it's just families to come in, our advocates to come in and speak with legislators, when the chambers are both in session, so all the legislators are there voting. That usually happens mid to late April. I know last year we came in on Hartford Day, which was extremely effective. Um, but that is a timeline to kind of keep in mind as well.
Just a quick question. When will Hartford Day be this year? Is it can be is it replicable this year or no? Like will we have is it a different date that we should be there for?
I'm trying to recall. I believe they do it every year. I'm sure it isn't set yet, but I will reach out to his staff that does the scheduling and ask them to let me know when it's booked so we can let you guys know.
Okay. If it doesn't make sense to go on that day, like basically what I guess the question that I have is like what day should we be in building with if we're able to get folks to show up, if we're able to organize ourselves and get some of our partners to show up, what day will make sense from your vantage point for us to be there? Even if we don't know the answer right away, we can get it for later. But that is like a question that came to mind while you were speaking about some of the deadline.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I think I know ideally a date in advance is really helpful for you guys so that people can plan. So I would say if we can do Hartford Day, that's probably the best because that might be set in stone sooner. Otherwise, Patrick and I might need a little bit of time to kind of feel out how things are going. Oftentimes, we won't know exactly when, there's a big debate that you guys might want to weigh in on. We want to have you guys all come in when there's something that's really important and critical. We don't want you to come in on a day or, a couple days later have something important happen. Oh, we should have been there a couple days later. So we have to be, cognizant of that. But something like a Hartford Day might be our best approach.
Right. And we may also get instruction from your delegation on what day, or they may say, look, we're going to do a press conference. And, what I mean, so that may be the day. So we won't know yet, but we do understand how important it is. And I'll just repeat what Nicole said for advance notice. We're dealing with parents and students and understand it's not easy for people just to drop things and show up at the Capitol.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a great answer.
Right. Next, do you want us to do update on meetings with the delegation, Krista? Or is there anything else you wanted to touch? Okay.
Yeah. Unless anybody had questions, or if we can get through, actually, let's get through the section on the meetings with our delegation, some of those strategies, and then we can open it up for some questions, and then we can move after those questions to the next point in the agenda.
Great. So I believe we reported last meeting that we have a firm meeting set with the speaker and the rest of the delegation for January 29th, prior to the session, to share with the speaker and your delegation the priorities of the board and this task force. And then that will lead to other, obviously meetings with delegation members after that, but also leadership of the Education Committee, appropriations. But so the kickoff will be meeting with the speaker, which he has been kind enough to host for us and invite the entire delegation to that.
That's wonderful to hear, Patrick. And in terms of our side and who should and needs to be present, what is your recommendation about who should be there in terms of like board members? Like what is your idea of who should be? I know we talked a little bit about it, but I want to firm it up now that we have the date and we're sort of moving.
Yeah, ultimately, it would be a decision of the board and the administration, but having representation from certainly. What I'm hoping, I do understand the superintendent's schedule is very tight, spending time both in the office and in the schools. But so we're hopeful that you might be there. I will leave it to the board to decide, representation from the board, representation from this group. Certainly, I believe a key person in that meeting would be Caitlin, to review the financial picture. I'm having just seen what she has put together. It's really impressive. She really has got a great handle on this. And I think that would be really terrific for the delegation to hear from her. Nicole and I talked about this prior to the meeting, anticipating that question. And Nicole, that's about where we landed. Yeah.
Yes. Yep, you got it.
Wonderful. So I hear superintendent, we want to make sure CFO Caitlin is there, and then you will leave it up to us to figure out which representatives from the board and what other members of this task force should be there as well. And the date being January 29th with the speaker and the entire Hartford delegation.
And that's at midday, 12:30.
12:30. Beautiful. So I wanted to just open that up for questions for folks who are not me. Go ahead, Board Member Tatum.
The idea for that meeting would be that we would, at that point, have our legislative priorities identified, and that would be us like presenting them to our delegation. That's correct.
That's right, Steve. Yes. And certainly as you see delegation members or see these speaker, I know some of you see these people sometimes regularly, maybe neighbors of some of them. Feel free to share, the work of this committee, and that it's underway, and that certainly hearing it in the community is as important, sometimes more important than hearing it in the building.
Thank you for that. I have Deborah first and then Board Member Walker after.
Hey, thanks, Krister. Thanks, everyone. This is Deb Zimmerman-Hers from Communications. Driving, hope it's not too loud. Last year, we created the Raise Your Hand campaign that had the postcards and the t-shirts, and we wanted to gather en masse when it was appropriate. And I just wanted to ask the lobbyists quickly, we will be doing that in addition, working with Caitlin and the company Scaffold. We're doing responsible, safe community pulse flash poll questions, and we're going to be promoting that as part of, information gathering from the community about things that should be kept and goals and things that, are positive and make sense in our schools. But did you feel that the postcards were successful last year? And if not, why not? And how could we change that? Thank you.
Yeah, and Nicole and I can both, I guess, take a stab at this. Certainly, they demonstrated, there were a lot of them, and demonstrated the commitment of parents and individual schools to the work of the board and the goals that you had set. So, was it effective? Yes, it is. Well, some might describe it as I wouldn't say old-fashioned, but so much is now flipped to legislators, the administration getting lots of information from social media. This was really hands-on. People took the time to fill these out, sign them, and so yeah, we're very pleased with that. Nicole, what was your reaction?
No, I think you've got it, Patrick. I think I know distribution is a little on the harder side because trying to find the right legislator for the right person. So Patrick and I kind of had to handle it last year. But if there's some way we can get people engaged earlier so that they can do some handing out themselves, I think that's also great.
Thank you, Nicole. Deborah, did that answer your question? And also, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we do want to start that soon. And of course, design them with Caitlin and the team.
Awesome. And if we can talk, and what that sets to me is that maybe Deborah, you, myself, Caitlin, and the board chair could maybe have a conversation around that, and just make sure you guys are supported and have what you need, and we are all in the same page of that sort of outreach, so that we can be supportive as much as we can, knowing that we have a little bit less time, well, a lot less time than last year, and so I think that might work, if that makes sense for you. I can have Christina reach out to do that.
Yeah, that would be great. And Pedro Zayas as well.
Yes,
And
Pedro.
last
Yes,
year,
thank you.
I know he did a lot of help
He did.
getting people in for testimony and advocacy in person as well.
Absolutely. And this year, just so we're clear, board members can turn in written testimony, but we will not be there physically. Like, we will not be providing in-person testimony. We're going to leave that to the voices of the families. But I wanted to make sure that at the very least, you all know that an expectation that we have is at the very least, we write written testimony for some of these bills, some of these things that we have. Board member Walker, and then Carol Gale.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Krista. So, I'm asking about coordinating with other partners. Before Christmas holidays, I met with Dan Pearson from Educators for Excellence and Erica Haynes from State and School Finance Project, and they seem to be interested in what we were doing at LNA, and thought there was an opportunity to coordinate what the things they want to support with maybe some stuff that we also are supporting. So I'm trying to figure out how to proceed with that. Clearly, we need to talk soon, but who are the right people? Who are the right people to be around the table to contrast and compare what they want to promote, and it feels like we kind of have a framework of what I think maybe going after, to see if it makes sense for us to do some stuff jointly together.
Thank you for bringing that up to our attention. CFO Caitlin Richards also mentioned that they might be going after some similar things that we might want to go after. So I think what might make sense, and we can probably figure this out offline as well, but maybe it's a meeting between any board member who's interested in attending, of course, from the Legislative Task Force, myself, Christina, and Caitlin, our CFO, and our board chair. And then we can just have like a general conversation about where they're at, sort of what they're, and just sort of that relationship building to make sure we know what they're doing, and if there's ways that we will be. It sounds like there's going to be some cross pollination. So if there is an opportunity for that, we want to make sure we're capitalizing on that for sure.
Thank you. Then, yeah, I kind of had that feeling from what Caitlin's comments were yesterday. So maybe I'll reach out to you and Caitlin to let's figure out a date soon, and then we'll pull in board member Brody and whomever, So now, of course, I'll be willing to tune in on that meeting. Thanks.
Absolutely. And Christina, can you support us in all this to make sure Christina's always involved? Sorry, Christina. HPS. Go ahead, Carol.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the press conference that happened this morning between members of the House of Representatives and Connecticut for All, speaking to the need for the governor to release the additional funds of the $500 million that were set aside to assist Connecticut residents with basic needs. And I was invited to speak at that from the perspective of community schools, because I know that Hartford has just lost funding for several of our community-based organizations that support our schools, similarly to New Haven, Waterbury, Stamford. And there was a press conference on Monday in New Haven on the similar issue. And so I did put that out there as a part of the same kind of bucket of health care that is in the governor's designated pots for this money, because our community-based organizations provide so much mental health services to students in our community. So the deadline for that is February 4th. And this meeting on the 29th is very timely, depending on how things move in that regard. that it might be a good touch point to see, where we are as you're speaking with the delegation and the speaker on that, on funding issues and legislative priorities, to just keep that aware as well.
Thank you, Carol. And can you repeat one more time what the ask was, like what exactly the Connecticut for All was asking, just so that we have some clarity?
Sure. The ask is that last year the legislature set aside and appropriated $500 million from the excess money that Connecticut has, specifically targeted to assist our Connecticut residents who have basic needs. Then the governor has designated those to be like food assistance, housing assistance, and healthcare assistance. And so recently, I believe I'm not sure exactly who it was. Actually, I think I have it here. Coming from the Office of Policy and Management, there has been 167 million of that amount that's been designated to a variety of, health, social service, mental health, housing, et cetera, services in the state, which leaves still about $350 million. And so Connecticut for All's ask is that the governor actually expend that $350 million, because while the legislature appropriated it, the governor has to be the one to actually spend it, to dictate, who's sending how much money where. If it doesn't get spent by the 4th of February, it sits, and then I believe by July 1, it gets reinvested into like the pay down of the pensions and that, which is what our rainy day fund money has been, all of the guardrail protections have been doing. So Connecticut for All's ask is, don't let this get reinvested in Wall Street. We set aside this money. We have needs right now. The federal government is taking away money, particularly from our cities, particularly from our democratic cities and states. And so given that, we know that we've lost money here in Connecticut, this was the intent, was to have some fallback funds to help our residents in these situations. Hartford's was only, I think, less than $500,000 at this point, what Caitlin shared with me. So, and I believe when you combine the other districts, it's still only about $5.5 million. So, the ask was to put $5.5 million of that $350 million towards our community schools. And then there were other speakers asking similarly for a couple of million here and $1 million there to go towards designated issues that fall within those buckets that the governor has set.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think part of what you're saying, Carol, is also like the recognition that there was some community school funding taken away by the Trump administration because of in the application of our grant, they found language which is there's not actually valid. Let's start there, right? What they found. And so what they did is they pulled, not based on the efficacy of our program, not necessarily based on the fact that we weren't doing a good job or some of the metrics. It was not based on that. It was just based on some of the language on the application that really was rooted around equity, justice. And so that is one of and that has left us with some fundings that were supposed to come from the federal government that were cut, and that we will need to continue to fund some of those community school programs. And we've been paying close attention to that because that is very impactful for our schools. And so we wanted to raise the awareness for us here. We know the district is aware of it. We wanted the district to also raise the awareness publicly about what the impact of this is for our legislators, so they understand that not only are we talking about the things that we've been focusing on in terms of what we want to do for legislative session, there's also this added layer of money that has been taken away by the federal government that we also need replenished, and the impact of that to our schools. So I appreciate you lifting that up, Carol.
Carol, thanks for sharing that. And and Nicole can jump in here. When we were alerted to this through, I believe it was Christina, we've had a meeting with the speaker's budget team to give him some of the detail from Hartford, and got, kind of get a sense where how this will proceed, and the hurdles that legislature will need to jump through in order to make it happen. So I guess it's safe to say that all the advocacy going around the state, what happened in Haven on Monday, what happened today, thank you for sharing that, is really important. Nicole, and I know we want to talk too much about that meeting, but we basically want to make sure we had a marker down with the leadership.
You got
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts before we move on to really a conversation about what those focus areas could be this session? And we, as you all know, we started with a bigger list. We then condensed that list to 1, 2, or 3 things that we thought we might want to go over. We also then realized that we needed more nuanced understanding of the funding structure, funding streams, and the amounts, which is something that our CFO worked really diligently on and did a fantastic job. She will go over some of that next week. I apologize. I wish we could do it today so that you have a better firm understanding here. But it is happening next week ahead of session. So it is something that we are mindful of. But we were able to do that. And from that conversation, we developed what we think are 7 levers of what we could potentially do as a district, both now and in the long term. And Christina, I don't know if you want to share it. And this is still a draft. We had a conversation yesterday, some changes will be made. But essentially, the idea is that we'll focus on some of these now, and then for next year and moving forward, these are some of the ways that, based on our deep understanding, our CFO's deep understanding of the funding streams from Hartford, that are some levers that we can maneuver to be able to get more funding for the district, and really rooted in the fact that a lot of the finances that have to do with open choice end up costing Hartford a lot of money, and an open choice being, the reality was that when Chef happened, it was because Hartford students were being harmed because they did not have the same resources as suburban schools, and the ways in which the legislature has taken the lawsuit and then applied its solution has created another version of inequitable distribution of resources that has left Hartford with deficits that if the program was funded through the state more robustly, we would not have to, so there's levers that we can pull from there. And we will have a further conversation of what that looks like. So this is sort of the categories are tuition. And I really do wish Caitlin was here to go over it, but I'll do my best to try. But basically, I'll do a general overview. We talked about tuition. We talked about transportation. We talked about the ECS formula. And then we talked about special education funding, magnet funding, and federal funding, which is that conversation we were having about the community school funding. And what we've learned based on the conversation that we've had together as a collective here, and our lobbyist suggestions, as well as what we think there's an appetite to do this year, we have agreed on 2 focus areas. If you wanted to, actually, Nicole, can I pass it over to you so you talk about those 2 focus areas?
For sure. Yeah. So after reviewing what you guys put together, Patrick and I just chatted quickly about, as you said, the different levers and how those related to what our goals will be for this year. And we ended up identifying number 7 and number 10. So 7 is an inflation adjustment to ECS base. And to board member Walker's point, and CFO Richard had pointed this out as well, the school and state finance organization is looking to get an inflation adjustment to the ECS base as well. So this would essentially update the ECS formula to reflect that things have changed since the last time the formula was crafted, including, the cost of living, inflation, things like that. And then the other one is number 10, fully fund a seed grant. And that's an idea of kind of building on what we did last year, right? We did approve, the legislature did approve the seed program, but they did not fully fund the grants. I think going back this year and saying, we appreciate this, but we really need that money funded as well. We need this fully funded because that's how you see the real impact. I think that's a good way to build on the work we did last year.
And then the other, thank you, Nicole. And then the other ones, of course, we would think about ways to talk through more of them, and then and maybe work through them at a later session. But we thought, especially because we have some partners that also want to do number 7, that inflation adjustment. To Nicole's point, it builds on that. Again, sorry, Caitlin's not here, so she can't go over sort of the numbers. But if you have any questions about this, please feel free to raise your hand. If I don't know the answer, we'll notate it, and then we'll get you an answer for next week's meeting.
I would like to ask a question about the shift responsibility for open choice sped expenses.
Sure. Gail, Carol, we can go to, just 1 second. Carol, then we'll go to Stephen Wilson, Board Member Wilson. Let's ask the question. If we can keep the answer brief, if we can get to the answer that you need right away, we'll make sure that we pin it for next time, just to make sure that we have time to go over some of the outreach that we might want to do as well. But yes, go ahead.
Carol, was your question just?
I just wanted to get more clarity in terms of what is that shift referring to, and what part of open choices are we looking at with that shift?
Okay. So maybe this is a question that I'll notate it, pin it, and highlight it for Caitlin next week to answer, because she has a whole presentation.
I can give a little context behind that.
Oh, yes. Who was that? I can't. Oh, Wilson, go ahead.
So as we discussed yesterday, the way open choice funding, and anyone who was there in the meeting can correct me if I'm wrong, the way the SPED funding works is that we get half the money per student. I forget the exact dollar figure, but we do, if a kid goes to another district due to open choice, they get half the funding for that child. We pay the other half. If there is a determination that kid needs some special needs through an IEP or something to that effect, we don't have a say. Hartford Public School doesn't have a say in any of those decision makings. But if that is the case, then additional funding is necessary, and it falls under Harvard Public Schools to provide. The shifting of the responsibility would be that open choice children who end up in another district that have some special needs, the funding for that, the responsibility for that funding directly falls in the district to which that kid is, that child is in, and any resources that we get for that child would also follow that child, but the additional responsibility wouldn't fall on us. And I believe the way it was phrased is that is not it's at no cost to the state. Nothing changes for the state, just the responsibility changes. So that was number 3, the shifting of the responsibilities.
Thank you. Thank you. And if I can add, we also talked a little bit about so 2 layers: the shifting of the responsibility to the district, the choice, the district where the student is at, but also the responsibility, could the shift be the responsibility of the state, right? Based on the fact that this is based on the lawsuit that was harming students of Hartford for inequitable distribution. And I think that was a really good summary. Thank you, Board Member Wilson. And we can have more detailed information when Caitlin comes back, but that's sort of the idea that we had, that we were thinking through based on the numbers that we see, that we have all these expenses, everything that Board Member Wilson said. And so who then is actually responsible for that, knowing that what the amounts that it costs. And not that
just
doesn't mean
for open choice, though. Just to be clear, it is just for open choice. It's not. Just to make that clear. Because open choice is unique.
It's just the open choice seats.
Because the way that's all funded is different from the other categories.
And that
Yeah, but
doesn't mean we do not want our young people to have the access. I want to be very clear, right? We want the problem is not that the students need the support. The problem is how we fund that support, right? And so I want to be very clear and firm about that because our students with disabilities deserve what they deserve, and we just have to figure out a way to fund that. And we can have better, clear answers for you next week because it's one of those things that we were having conversations about, but we hadn't settled on that. So we wanted to make sure that Kaylin is also here to be able to provide some context around that.
no, Mr. Wilson's explanation was perfect. It was what I was hoping to hear, and I think it's a very important shift to have happen. So thank you.
Beautiful.
And Krista, if I could just add really quick.
Yes.
So just really quick, in open choice, basically the state legislation says that for all intended purposes, the student who participates from Hartford is a member of that district's community. And what we're saying is yes, except when it comes to the special education costs.
Yeah.
So they control the IEP, they host the PPT, but then the district is responsible for the covering of expenses based just on special education, to which we're not truly involved in the decision making. So that's just it in a nutshell of like how do we shift that expense? And not necessarily to the district or to the city, but just discussion around a shift.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. I think I saw Deborah and then Millie Arciniega, if we can go in that order.
Yeah, thank you. My question is about the same thing. Um, very passionate about this shift, and I know that we'll be advocating and asking for that. But my question is open choice a mandate? And is this group, these bodies that we are petitioning to, can they open that and change that? Or is there a different legislative body that we would appeal to for this change? And that's my question.
I can respond if that's helpful, Krista. So open choice is actually a part of the chef legislation. And so what you're picking up on, Deb, is that the chef legislation and the special ed legislation are not aligned. And so it's in both buckets that would have to consider how it shifted. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you. I just want to also make sure that we'll be advocating for this shift to the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And
Sorry. Thanks, Krista.
thanks, Deborah. And just so you know, yeah, and so go ahead, Millie. Sorry.
Thank you. I mean, this just reminds me of the question I had the last meeting. So, like, we're wanting to shift all of these expenses, but at the same time, they're telling us that we are held harmless for 22,000 kids, right? So, where does that money go if we have 15,000 kids? So that's the question, the magic question that we always get when we go out to the legislators. And I know that Doug McCory was trying to resolve that with a legislation change that he wanted to do, but I don't know if he got all the districts on board with it. Um, but I mean, it would be nice. I mean, I don't know if the CFO is gonna be going over that. It would be nice to have something where we can explain to families, hey, look, we get this, but in reality, this is what it cost us, and line by line, right? So starting from central office all the way down, because we often say, we want to put this back into the kids, but then, we're seeing other things, right? So like we want to make sure that it's going to where we say it's going to go to. And answer that question, have that question answered once and for all.
Yeah. Thank you, Millie. I will, board member Tatum, and then you might respond to this, or I also will respond to, but go ahead.
Yeah, I had the same wondering after our last legislative task force about the held harmless thing, and CFO Richard was able at our meeting yesterday with the board to answer that question directly. The answer is that although the way the legislation is written, we would be held harmless for any decreases in student numbers from fiscal year 2017, which probably is where that 22,000 number that you're referring to, Millie, comes from. The thing is, because ECS was not fully funded at that point, the amount that we are receiving in ECS this year for the fewer number of students that were enrolled at the beginning of the 2024 school year is actually greater than the amount that we received back in 2017. And so now, because ECS is fully funded, going forward, we will be held harmless for this year's amount that we receive. So even though it's less students that are factoring into ECS, because it is now fully funded, we're receiving more in ECS money than we did back in 2017. So yeah, bottom line, this year we are receiving more in ECS funding than we have in the past 10 or so years.
Is that what you wanted to talk about, Remember Tatum? Is that why you had your hand up? Okay.
It is.
Yes, and that was part of the conversation we had yesterday. And so part of what our CFO can go over next week is exactly that. So you will definitely have an answer. We have an answer, and she did a really good job at being able to pull that together. And Board Member Tatum broke it down. And then we can have further information from CFO Caitlin. And then we have 5 minutes, so I want to make sure we're in a good place. Our last comment for this section will be Board Member Chairwoman Brody, and then we can go into next steps.
Hi. The State Department has said something opposite of what we're saying here. So we have to reach out to some of our contacts there to bring some validity to this last discussion, because what has been conveyed to us doesn't match our line of thinking, and we want to make sure, are we thinking wrong because someone in the State Department misspoke, or are we actually not on the right track and we could recalibrate and get to where we need to be? But that's something that I will talk to Kate about also.
So what I'm hearing is that we are going to talk about one bullet point at the beginning of next meeting is going to be the Hell Harmless conversation. And in the meantime, to make sure that we are all on the same page and that what we think is true from all of the various factors of folks that we know, so that we have the correct answer. And that way we'll have a firm answer next meeting, so that we can answer that question, because Millie, I agree, it's really important that we know that. Anything else, Chairwoman Brody? Okay, well, okay, beautiful. So we are 5 minutes out, and I wanted to save space for just sort of go over next steps. The next steps really is thinking through, we know the dates, we know what our focus areas are going to be to the extent that we know. We will shore up that next week when we have Caitlin back and answer some of these questions. And really what is next, and we'll go over next steps. And I think we wanted to do this before today, but I don't think we had the time to do that, is to put together a list of community partners we might want to reach out to ensure that they know what we're going to be focusing on, and to know that if they wanted to submit testimony and all of that. So it sounds like we still have to put that list together and have that prepped and ready for next meeting, and to hand that over to the lobbyists as well. And by next week, we'll finalize everything that the two things that and to be perfectly blunt, we're focusing on two just because there's a lot of moving pieces and it's a short session. And so next week, we'll firm those up. We will have an answer on the question that Millie rose today. And then we will talk a little bit more about outreach, because I think in the meantime, we'll talk to the district about outreach. One thing that I want to leave in your ears as we're getting ready for session is that think about your own spheres of influence, right? When we're thinking about, especially for board members or union leaders, think about your own spheres of influence and who you can bring along to provide testimony, to fight on behalf. For board members, my request is that on your own personal, you can have 1 to 5 people that can write testimony with you, parents, community leaders, allies, folks that might be wanting to also lend their voice, to add that in addition to the outreach of the our community partner organizations might do and our schools might do. And we'll definitely talk more about that next week for sure. It is 4:57. Any straggling thoughts, any reactions, anything we want to go over? These always feel really quiet and I talk too much through them, so I just want to make sure we have space for y'all. Also, was it good? Did you feel like you got what you needed? Like, just wanted to make sure, check the temperature of that as well.
You did
Thank you,
great.
Krister. Thank you so much for organizing this. It feels really well organized and awesome. So you're not talking too much. This is good.
Okay, good. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, board member Miles.
Agreed.
Beautiful. We are right on time. We will follow up. We will see you back here next Wednesday at the same time at 4 p.m. We'll talk tactics, we'll talk outreach, and we will get it moving because we blinked and it is 2026 and legislative session's here.